a very warm welcome to a special series, Business Today's CEO Immersives. I'm Devina Lasson. Now, in this unique series, we fetch you unique conversations, up-close and personal chats with the creme de la creme of the C-suite of India to fetch you pertinent industry insights and also give you a sneak peek at the personalities behind the corporate personas. In today's episode, Sourav Majmudar, editor of Business Today, and Anand Adhikari, managing editor of Business Today, are in conversation with Amitabh Chaudhry, the managing director and CEO of Axis Bank, to decode and understand the meaning of the rising interest rates in India, how much they might rise, the impact on investors and borrowers, and much more. Take a look.
Hello, Mr. Chaudhry, and thank you very much for speaking to Business Today. We are in the middle of a lot of interesting developments in the markets and banking space, global interest rates. Let me jump straight into the first question then. US and UK have been raising interest rates. The central bankers have started taking action. What is the impact you think that will have on global interest rates and therefore on India?
Well, as you're aware that during the pandemic, the global banks expanded their balance sheet by close to $13 trillion. And this is more than what the world did almost in 11 years after the global financial crisis of 2008. So look at the amount of money which has been injected into the system in such a short period of time. Now, obviously, it looks like inflation is taking hold. In US and Europe, the estimates for inflation are 8.5% and 7.5% respectively. More and more commentary coming from economists and even the central bankers is that if they don't take some action, this inflation could take hold. And inflation is not good for any economy or for politicians. So they don't need to do something about it. And as a result, the central banks, as you rightly pointed out, have been clearly announcing their intent to take the liquidity away to some extent. US is talking about almost close to 95 billions of quantitative tightening every month going forward, which means they'll take almost $1 trillion away. And UK central bank is talking about increasing rates. A lot of other central banks are also talking about increasing rates. And that will also obviously have a clear impact on India because anyway we were seeing the prices rising because of the supply chain issues during COVID times. What the Russian-Ukraine war has done is that the tightening not only of the supply chain, but there is a clear rise in commodity prices, oil, gas, edible oil, food. And Russia and Ukraine both were big suppliers of some of the food grains to the world. As a result, the price shock is steep, it's fast. You're already seeing what is happening in some of the emerging economies around the world. And that exogenous inflation will come to India also. India saw one of the highest inflations post-November 20 in March of 6.98%.
That's right.
RBI has increased the estimates of inflation for this financial year to 5.7%. They are already for the last 3 months outside the zone of 2 to 6% on inflation. So they have to do something. So in that sense, yes, the inflation has come to India, and if we don't do something about the interest rates, it could become a problem.
So you talked about the global, expanding global balance sheet. Similar thing happened in the post 2008 period. So is this time different?
No, this time the expansion of the balance sheet is much larger in a shorter period of time. Not only that, this time we are also seeing there is a shock in some terms of the price rise in some of the commodities and some of the specific sectors of the economy, which was not there at that time. This time we also have a war which is going on, which looks like a long grind as we speak. So the economic conditions around the world will remain volatile. GDP growth rates have been reduced. I think IMF predicted 3.5% each for the next 2 years. And anyway, the economies are slowing down. Now, with this quantitative tightening, with this, expected numbers on inflation, the growth could get impacted further. And any impact on growth, any negative impact on growth, any situation where the inflation is going to rise, means that as the global growth slows down, every economy in the world will get accordingly impacted. And that's exactly what we're seeing as we speak.
So is there
today.
a threat of imported inflation?
We already are seeing imported
coming
inflation.
Coming through the currency route.
So we are seeing imported inflation. Part of it will come through the currency. So people are talking about rupee depreciating a little bit. But what you have seen in Indian rupee invariably is that it doesn't depreciate at a regular basis. You have periods when it depreciates quickly and then it kind of remains stable.
While they have started saying that inflation is now the real concern over growth, in fact. Do you think somewhere we've become, so we are falling behind on the curve a bit on rates? Because, there was an expectation that there would be some indication even in the last policy statement, but there hasn't been.
Well, RBI has not, said these things in terms of headline, but they have been doing things behind the scenes quite a bit. I mean, if you look at how really they have managed and reset expectations on the rates while we had a reverse repo rate, and we still have a reverse repo rate of 3.35%, by doing this variable reverse repos, they actually set the benchmark at closer to 4%. Now they have introduced a standing deposit facility where they've anchored the rate to 3.75%. You look at where the 10-year government rates are. They've already kind of, over the last 12 months or so climbed to close to 6.2% on a 10-year government rate. So RBI has been gradually, slowly pushing the interest rates up by doing various things and not changing the headline rates. What has not happened is because of the excessive liquidity in the system, the rates for the corporates and the rates for, let's say, banks have not gone up. And that does need to change, because at the end of the day, you cannot have a situation where the government is borrowing at a rate which is higher than what some of the corporates or the individuals can borrow. This can't last forever. RBI has been very, very smart about how they have done this. They've always surprised the market, but they have been on top of the situation all through this crisis. So I'm sure they will continue to do the same as well.
How many hikes should we expect in the next 12 months? I mean, not
our economist is saying at least 2, if not 3 hikes, so somewhere between 50 to 75 basis points increase in the overall rates. The market expectations based on what rates they're predicting is more like 1% hike. So let's see finally where we end up. But I would say somewhere between 50 to 75 basis points has to happen.
Once interest rates start going up for corporates, margins are sort of squeezed. It's kind of a vicious cycle, isn't it? I mean, then you really don't know where the corporate earnings will go. How do you think that part will play out once interest rates start rising?
Top-notch corporates. The corporates have over the last couple of years deleveraged themselves quite a bit. They've raised a lot of equity. They've raised debt at cheaper rates in the market over a period of time. They've not been spending that much of money in terms of capex. So I think interest rates per se are not going to have a real impact on their ability to invest or their plans to invest, because then we are not talking about interest rates shooting up. We are talking about marginal change in interest rates. So I don't think that is going to get impacted. Yes, the borrowers who have suffered during the COVID crisis and have been supported by the government through various schemes, ECGLS or otherwise, or moratorium, any increase in interest rates just adds to the already a huge set of problems they have in front of them. My view is you have to be cautious. Things are improving. Small rise in interest rates is not really going to impact most of the borrowers in any significant fashion.
And banks have already started raising MCLR rates.
Yes, they have, but for example, for the retail, most of the retail interest rates are on floating rate and they're linked to reverse repo. So unless the reverse repo rate increases, those rates are not going to go up. A lot of banks are trying to enter the mortgage space where the rates have actually been going down through all this crisis, down to almost 6.5%, 6.4%. Now some people are increasing the rates a little bit, but it is marginal. It is small. I don't think it is changing borrowers' decision to go and buy a house because interest rates have gone up by 5-10 basis points. They've had a great interest rate ride for a long period of time.
So you don't really see that impacting the rate increases over time, impacting banks' balance sheets at all?
I don't think so. I do hope the credit growth picks up and the economy picks up. But again, there you are seeing that the GDP growth forecasts have been coming down rather than going up. Now, even for us to register that kind of GDP growth rate of, let's say, 7.2%, which is the latest forecast from RBI, the credit growth should be 1.5 to 2 times. We are not seeing that credit growth come through because the private capex has to pick up. Let's also understand and appreciate the fact that the corporates in general have now much wider set of avenues to raise money from rather than just banks alone. I think the Western world realizes India has an important role to play in the overall scheme of things. It is expected that in the next couple of decades, India will be the 3rd largest economy in the world. So given all of that, India is well positioned to capitalize on this. Let's see how well we capitalize on this opportunity before us. So this is a great time for India if we can get all our wickets to be aligned so that the economy can move in a certain direction.
Which are the areas where you see really stress building up for you?
I mean, as far as Axis Bank is concerned, given where our asset quality is, I think it's best in class in the industry. We are not seeing any real sector of stress at this point in time. Generally, our portfolio quality is doing very, very well. The only thing we will have to worry about is that when the payments start coming due under the ECGLS scheme, because there was a period of moratorium where they did not have to pay the loans. Let's see how that pans out. How many of the companies are really able to come out of the shock they went through, or some of them do kind of fall on the wayside and actually have to wind up. But the overall orders of the economy are improving. So a lot of the SMEs and MSMEs, at least we are dealing with, are telling us that no, things are looking good. We can see that in their numbers. We can see that in how things are flowing through their accounts. So from a stress perspective, nothing as of today. But that should worry us, because if there's nothing as of today, we should be watching it even more carefully.
Mr. Chaudhry, one thing coming back to your earlier point about corporates not investing, the private capex, why do you think, despite so much of balance sheet cleanups and funds coming in from various segments other than banks, like you said, why do you think that is?
I think people were slow on the private capex side because they're not seeing real growth come through. They were obviously, in a lot of these sectors of the economy, they were quite worried about the rules, regulations, and how they will pan out. But I do believe private capex will pick up. A lot of large transactions are happening. If things continue the way they are, they don't worsen, I think private capex will come back.
And so there's not much room on the monetary side, to support the economy. What about the fiscal?
The government has not hesitated from supporting things fiscally. The GST, look at the GST numbers. They have picked up so well.
Yeah,
Gives a lot of headroom to the government. Even the tax collections overall on the income tax side also have been very, very healthy. So from that perspective, it does give some headroom to the government. But yes, all of us have to realize that the oil prices, the fertilizer subsidy will eat into some of these healthy returns which are coming from the tax side. But government has really, the way they have spent money during COVID, they've been smart about it. They have not just printed currency left, right, and center. So I think there is some headroom available. The hope is that hopefully the commodity prices have peaked and they will hopefully go only down from here rather than the other way. But let's credit the government where it is due, and RBI where the credit is due. I think they've managed this whole crisis quite well. Just Mr. Gates said the other day that if you look at the Indian economy and you look at the profile of the economy and the people there, it's perhaps one of the best vaccinated programs in the world. Kudos to the government for being able to do that.
You don't see the interest rate, increases affect the government borrowing to a great extent?
Well, the prices have moved up. I don't think the interest rates will harden a little bit, but the government, I think the borrowing rates are already reflecting the hike in prices expected. They might move up a little bit. If you pay more, it obviously squeezes you in terms of the fiscal side. But can the government absorb it? I think yes, they can.
And sir, you are an avid reader, and you also love music. How do you balance three? Work, music.
I have no choice. After work, I have to find a way to relax. So I do find the time to read. I read a lot. I have moved away from physical books to Kindle. So I'm reading a couple of books at the same time. It's easy to do that in a Kindle. And I read books of all kinds. So
these are not business books all the time.
No, I have business books after the first 30 pages.
Non-fiction?
I read a lot of history, and a little bit of fiction, but I read a lot of history. A lot of books about what is happening around the world. So all kinds of scams happen all the time around the world, and a lot of books are written about those scams. There's always good insight to see what really happened there, what got missed out. It's interesting to...
So those give you red flags in the head.
Oh yes,
what
absolutely.
To watch out for.
A lot of red flags in terms of why it happened, how it happened, and it also tells you the reality in the world. What we see, what we feel, and what actually happens. There's a lot of difference between how it gets portrayed. The same people who are portrayed in the media as what a great job they were doing. A couple of years later, when things go the other way, they're portrayed very differently because the facts are different. It's always good to read these books and get those insights and keep telling yourself what are some of the things one should be careful about. Or the interesting read. It does tend to relax you.
And what kind of music you like?
All kinds, the whole range, from Bollywood to classical to everything in between.
And that helps you sort of wind down after a hard day.
Just put on the music and just be in your own world, vibrate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chaudhry. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Same, exactly. Same. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.